I'm Mary Starr. This is a Wake to Truth podcast. We are delighted to have today as our very special guest, Maria Zeee with Zeee Media. I'm going to ask Maria to tell you about herself. She has a very interesting background, and I couldn't do it justice, but she certainly can. So, Maria, why don't you tell us about yourself, and then we'll launch into our content.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mary, for having me. It's great to be here. So I have a long history working in sectors such as employment services, used to help disabled people into work, actually. And I did that really passionately for many years. And then when COVID hit, I really didn't think I'd ever do anything else. But then when COVID hit, I sort of said, okay, well, I need to start talking about this. I knew about the New World Order for many, many years, and I didn't know exactly how it would be rolled out, but I could see the incremental steps, and I'd been tracking them over many years, And then when this happened, I thought, okay, this is pretty serious, and they're doing this worldwide. I need to speak up. And so I started talking about this, eventually resigned from my job because my company was really good to me and I didn't want to put them into disrepute, with the things that I was talking about. And so started doing media. Australia was really struggling with independent media, and I mean truly independent. And our audience was actually saying to us, launch a media company. So it really was a demand of the people to get independent news. And so we did it. And it grew very, very quickly within the first year. It sort of became one of the largest outlets in the country and then really went international. We started working a lot with people in the US, and our focus has been really geopolitical, financial, sort of the agenda, things happening behind the scenes with shadow governments, exposing government corruption. It's really a broad range of topics that we cover, but our latest focus, especially since last year, has really been focusing on the US and leading up to the election and post-election, because everything that happens here affects the whole world. And we know that the West is going to be impacted, whether negatively or positively. The entire West will be impacted by what happens in the United States. And so it's been really, really fascinating being here and seeing all of this develop and just watching the disdain and darkness that was really enveloping this country prior to President Trump's win, and now the hope that people have. It's been amazing to witness. So that's where we're at right now.
I'm just going to say it is palpable. You go out, I don't care where you go, if it's the grocery store, it doesn't matter. The
Yes.
people are smiling, the people are polite, the people are happy. And it is a palpable feeling that you get when you're out in public. Do you not feel that?
Absolutely. And, Mary, it's really interesting because I watched, I heard about Scotland celebrating after President Trump's win, and they went out into a field and they were holding this humongous American flag and just cheering on the victory. And you have similar things, in Australia, where I'm originally from, people just absolutely celebrating this win and saying, we want someone like Trump. We want Trump policies. And while I don't think that President Trump is perfect, and I'm certainly not, shy to criticize certain things, and have never been, the positivity that this has brought to the whole world is something that can't be denied. And I often say, unless you're here, you really can't understand it. You can't understand the stark difference of how Americans were feeling prior to the election and now, unless you've been here and experienced it. It's been amazing to witness.
I can only say amen to that because, truthfully, I did not realize it until after the election. And this is no joke. I truly believe I had been depressed for 4 years, and that's not me. Anyone who knows me well knows that I'm like the most cheerful, upbeat, really just full of life and joy. And to be depressed for 4 years, that's difficult. I'll just say it. It's difficult. And it's like this huge weight and freedom that the weight has been lifted. I feel the freedom. I feel the joy. And so do all these other people. And, you hold the door open for somebody who needs it and they smile and say, thank you. And it's like it used to be. And I don't mean to sound like an old person, but I'm just saying people have not been happy. People have not shown good manners for a while.
Well, I have to say my experience in Texas has been that I describe Texas as stepping back in time 20 years when people were still normal. Texans are a special breed of people. They are really, the heart and soul of America. I feel that way. I'm not, throwing shade on the other states, but Texas is really special. And so I felt this sense of real people, real heart, real soul, real care, genuine honesty. It's just something you can't really describe again unless you've experienced it, even prior to the election. But I definitely feel that there is the weight has been lifted off America post-election. Absolutely. It's like you said, it's palpable. It's there. And unless you're here, you can't really understand it.
Well, thank you for all of your kind words about Texas. I am blessed to have lived here my entire life. Don't think I could live anywhere else. I truly believe one of the differences in Texas is because we were a republic of our own before we joined the United States. And that gives you a different and very independent line of thinking. You think differently, you act differently, you are different. And that's probably what you have noticed.
Yes, well, a lot of people would argue that, Texas never officially joined, and that's a whole separate conversation. But I think you're right in terms of that's probably where it comes from, the real independence. And, I when I think of Texas, I think of that flag, "Don't tread on me." It's just, you're not going to mess with Texas.
That is a fact. So this has been fun. I've enjoyed exchanging pleasantries, but we need to get down to business because I know you have a hard stop coming up and I don't want to cut our time short to cover some important matters. So one of the things that really caught my attention yesterday was what someone posted about a government within our government that has been operating. And I'd like you to speak to that and give us truth.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So that is, I think you're referring to the clip from Vigilant Fox, a colleague of mine, who shared Data Republican's interview or a snippet of it with Glenn Beck. Now, Data Republican, sadly, was just doxxed, and she's really dedicated lady. I had a bit of a look into her history yesterday because she decided to address, who she is and what she's about. She's actually hearing impaired, and she says, what began as a side hobby became a mission when I uncovered the role of NGOs in all of these issues that Doge has been uncovering. So she's been doing a phenomenal job. And in this interview with Glenn Beck, she basically explained that the shadow government has been subverting the people by utilizing our tax dollars, to create a government within a government. And that's what Doge has exposed. That's what all of this, the ties to USAID and the funding to all of these NGOs and these insane programs across the world. Not only are these programs nothing to do with American interests, they are actually anti the things that really are conducive with American values, and albeit the previous administration tried to change those values, didn't do so successfully, I would say, apart from a few really hardcore progressives. Clearly, the previous election and the results of it show that that is not where the direction that America wants to head in. You're paying for drag queen shows in other countries and DEI in Serbia and, Sesame Street in Iraq. I mean, it's just crazy. The theft, the absolute theft and robbery that has been happening of the American people for all these years. It's interesting, Mary, I did an interview with a gentleman who's at invisible_INQ on X. His name is Andrew, and Andrew Arnold. And he's actually a huge AI guy. And what he did was map all of the stuff that came out of Doge and USAID. He mapped it in a way where it's this very complex graphic. It kind of looks like a galaxy, a bit hard to describe if you haven't seen it. But basically, it has all the lines going from USAID to all the various things that they've been funding. And it includes terrorism. It includes mountains of undisclosed funds to Afghanistan and Congo. It includes bioweapons programs, viruses upon viruses, gain-of-function research. Obama's mother is involved. I mean, the web is astounding when you see it. And, when you see the funds that went through EcoHealth Alliance for the Wuhan Institute of Virology, this is the first time I've actually seen, it basically is a visual of what Data Republican has been uncovering. It's fascinating. The information that's coming out now is really mind-blowing.
Well, I was really pleased. I watched that clip with Glenn Beck, and it was eye-opening. And I was just sitting there going, "Oh my goodness, I had no idea about the government within the government," and that's why I wanted to talk about it today.
That's really been the way in which the New World Order functions for generations, right? So when we say the New World Order, we're talking about the shadow organization that, or the shadow group of people rather than organization, that is really pulling the strings behind the governments worldwide. And the political theater that we get served up is basically just that. It's just political theater. And every single country is facing this problem of a uniparty where you have two options that you can vote for. And they're basically where you used to have left and right really diametrically opposed to one another. Now they're pretty much the same with just a few varying policies, but the outcomes are always the same. And it's always leading to more destruction of every country. And that's been especially apparent since COVID and any elections that have sort of happened after COVID, barring the US. That's been the system. And any sort of outliers that come, that are independent candidates, they make it so incredibly difficult. In fact, Calin Georgescu in Romania, who I interviewed, really funny, CNN did a hit piece on us, CNN Romania, following that interview because it was so powerful. It was being shared millions of times on TikTok. He was one of those people. He's actually a former top UN official who realized that the UN is an evil organization and was actually doing things that were anti-human all over the world. And he left and he said, "Well, I'm going to run for president." Really amazing guy. And so he essentially won the election in Romania. They said, "No, sorry, you didn't win. And also we're putting you in prison, a house arrest."
Wow.
It's incredible. This literally just happened. And so it's like anyone that is truly independent, that rises up, they're subjected to immense legal lawfare. And the press just goes after these people, like we saw with President Trump, by the way. The difference is he's a billionaire and he has the Republican Party backing him. So it's a little bit harder to take down a figure like that than it is a truly independent, But in other countries where the uniparty is in full function, like you've got in Australia, for example, or I would argue even Canada, it's much harder to get someone truly independent in, and even to penetrate the uniparty unless you're really towing party lines. Pretty much impossible to penetrate the uniparty. And so what everything that's been uncovered has shown is how that has managed to function in the background. You have this uniparty, these sort of, sock puppets really, that just are mouthpieces for those that are above them, that are really running every single country. And the ways in which they maintain all this control is through this insane web of NGOs. We've been talking about this for such a long time, especially where the UN is related. Like when you look at, for example, the sexualization of children, that specific agenda, well, you can just go, all roads lead back to the UN and the WHO who are really behind this. They say that we need to start doing this with children from as early as 5. And so, the web has always been, the problem has always been all these NGOs. But what has been exposed through Doge is that USAID has been funding so much of this. And I think that that's what people are, again, like you said, shocked but not shocked. They're shocked to find out the magnitude. It's probably more of a shock that it's actually coming out than it is that it was the case, I think.
Well, the thing that I have kind of, I guess, paid attention to over the last, say, 13 months is that we've gone from people not really understanding what the UN, the WHO, and the WEF had to do with America and our politics and the takedown of our country. And now there have been enough of people like you and me speaking out about that, and they're going, okay, I'm starting to see that. I'm starting to get it. I have spoken to audiences where it was just, a room full of blank stares. And I don't know if it was denial or disbelief, but it was just completely silent and no audience feedback at all. And that's a scary thought, because it's like these people have no clue. And these are mainstream Americans. These are not people that are uneducated and not plugged into what's going on in the world, but they were not aware of that. And
you're right. Sorry.
And frankly, that's how I found it, because I started digging in. Literally, my quest began because of what I saw going on at the border, growing up as I did near the border. And I can see what a vast difference there is between then and now. And I'm like, okay, what is the difference? What is feeding this and what is funding it? Because this is not what I saw growing up in deep South Texas. So I started peeling back the layers of the onion. And it didn't take very long to find UN, WHO, and WEF. And it went there.
Yeah, I was invited to speak at the Reawaken America tour a couple of years ago, which is the first time I visited, and I remember I did a presentation about based on what the UN and WHO had published, where they wanted to take us and where they wanted to take America, and basically the current administration was fully on board with this. You could see the signs were everywhere. Now, do I have some concerns around some of the technocrats surrounding the current administration? Yes, I absolutely do. And I've been honest about those concerns. But in terms of what it was at that point and who was pulling the strings at that point, I remember delivering this presentation. It was so detailed. It was about smart cities and forced injections and all this sort of stuff. And the room was just staring blankly at me. And we're talking about, I think there were 5,000 attendees at that particular tour. And, most people didn't understand what I was talking about, Mary, because it's very dark. And, a lot of people don't want the dark side of things. They just want to know the sort of stuff that's easy to digest. And the reason why we got to this point now, like everything, if you're watching what's being discovered by USAID and DOGE, through about USAID and DOGE and all these other departments, right? If you're watching this and going, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. If you had delved a little bit deeper and not been afraid, I'm not suggesting people are, but if you delved a bit deeper prior to all of this being exposed and not been, afraid of going down those deep, dark holes, then it wouldn't be such a surprise to you. I'm like you, Mary. I'm like, well, I kind of knew all of this. I didn't know all of the intricate details, but I understood a long time ago that this was how it was occurring. This is how the shadow government is functioning. And not completely. It's just one aspect. You also have the monetary aspect. You also have, all the other stuff. But the NGOs are a huge, huge part of this. And so, I think what people should do now is not be afraid of the dark information, because I think more will come out.
Well, the truth has to come out because that's the only way that we're going to survive. If we do not expose the truth, these things will overtake America. And if that happens, how goes America is how goes the world.
Yep, that's exactly right. And this is why it was so important to us to be here and, be here for the election season and even post, because the world is changing. The world is changing very rapidly. And after President Trump's win, America is leading that charge. And so how is the world going to be shaped by what happens through this administration? It will be shaped by it. And, I was just speaking this week with Dr. Kirk Elliott about this, where BRICS was pretty much set to take over. Like, had Kamala won, let's say, she would have proceeded with the controlled demolition of America and the American dollar, and the financial system would have collapsed, and it would have happened in a heartbeat. Right. So everything that President Trump is doing right now is trying to reverse course from a lot of where it was heading. And, where BRICS, for example, was really set to become a dominant world currency, Trump stepped in and said, no, you're not going to overtake the US dollar, and I'm going to make sure of it. So all of these things impact every single country, especially the West. So it's important that we pay attention to it.
Absolutely. Someone commented on X a couple of days ago, and I replied back to them. The basic context of the comment had been about how things would have been so dramatically different if President Trump had not won. My comment was pretty blunt and to the point, and I said, if he had not won, America did not stand a snowball's chance in hell of making it. And that's exactly what I said, and it's exactly what I meant.
Yes, absolutely. Although I think that there are a lot of concerns that people have. And I think I'm going to just be honest with you, Mary, that conservatives are very dismissive often of concerns of the other side. And rightly so, okay? The other side, if we just go with the left-right paradigm, which I hate, by the way, and I don't sit on it, but let's just go with that for the moment. The left was relentlessly attacking conservatives, calling us Nazis, calling us God knows what else for the past 4 years, telling us we're extremists, terrorists.
Don't forget about the tinfoil hat thing.
Yeah, all of that. There's a photo of me actually in a hit piece wearing one. But anyway, so, it's like we they've relentlessly attacked us, and so they've lost all credibility. And I understand that. But there are some very interesting key points coming out of some of these people right now that I think that conservatives are often too dismissive about. We had this huge victory Trump's doing great things. But are there concerns, for example, about moving towards AI government? Yeah, there absolutely are. Does everyone have implicit trust in Elon Musk? I think that, this character came into the movement a very short time ago, backed President Trump. Now, the reason is because he realized freedom was important. The reason is also because freedom is popular, right? So I just think that people need to be a little bit more cautious with the way that things are going, and especially some of the characters surrounding, some of the big tech, the Silicon Valley guys. Like, if you look at who was actually involved in Doge long before it was launched, it's all big tech, biotech, so people that want to inject us with a whole bunch of stuff that's going to kill us. All these kinds of people from Silicon Valley are actually behind Doge. So do we trust it completely? Well, the results so far have been really great, but what's the end game? Well, Elon Musk has said, we need sort of AI government pretty much. And that's the red line for me, Mary. I actually think that that's very dangerous. And that's where Americans should remain involved in the political process, not just perceive it all as positive. Just be a little bit more critically thinking about how this is going, and remain involved and voice your concerns where you have them.
Yes. Well, the thing that I have been extremely vocal about repeatedly over the last couple of weeks, when I would see someone post, and I'm just going to say very often it would be someone that's a politician, and I would reply back to them, that they were concerned about Doge having access to our personal information. And my immediate response is, well, first of all, let's start with Elon Musk owned PayPal at one time. He had access to the personal information of everyone who had an account there, and nothing bad happened. Now, let's talk about how the government allowed the Social Security Administration to have a data breach last year that put, I believe, around 400 million people's personal information on the dark web. Yes, mine was included. And my question back to these politicians is, who do you trust more with your personal information, a dark web troll or Elon Musk, a billionaire who really does not need or care about your personal information? But then my question is, but maybe, is it possible you're worried about your personal information, Mr. or Mrs. Politician? Are you worried about your personal information coming out? Is that why you're making such a big deal about this? So far, I haven't gotten any of them responding to me.
Yes. So what we have, it's really hilarious. We have these politicians who are career politicians who really haven't achieved anything in their lives other than, I guess, some insider trading and, doing what their lobbyists ask them to do. So they're not really working on behalf of the American people. And this is the problem in every country, right? It's just whatever the lobbyists say, whatever those above them say, the puppet masters are in control. And so what happens is that what's happening right now is that they're terrified of what's going to be exposed about them. Is it going to lead to arrests? I darn hope so. I really, really hope that we start to see some accountability for all of this fraud. It's all well and good to know that $30 million went to Iraq's Sesame Street or, for a gay opera in Ireland or whatever it was. That's all well and good to know that. Who authorized that? What authority did they have to authorize that? And did they break the law when they did it? And if so, are they going to be held accountable? These are the types of things that I want to see. And so, but they're panicking because they perceive that they will be held accountable, which is a good thing. They should be panicking. I just hope that we do see that accountability is what I'm saying. That's the next phase. And so far, we haven't really moved to that phase. So I want to see some of that happening soon.
Well, we all have to pause and remember that Inauguration Day was 5 weeks ago. I mean,
yes,
it's amazing what has been accomplished in 5 weeks. But again, it is only 5 weeks.
I absolutely agree with you. I absolutely agree. And what they've accomplished in this time has been tremendous. And I think that Trump's strategy is to go in hard, fast, because unless you do that, you give them more time and opportunity to cover their crimes, right? So it's like, let's just get in there. It's been a complete upheaval of the existing system and it needed to happen. But I do think that there are, where people were concerned about, for example, Elon accessing everyone's data. I don't think that Elon's trying to steal everyone's money. I'm not that's stupid, right? It's just ridiculous.
Right.
But do I think it's interesting or concerning that a group of one particular person working on his team is convicted hacker. Another one was fired from his previous job for leaking personal information to a competitor. And something like that, those types of practices would normally disqualify you from working in that industry. Again, such a breach, like that's fraud and, absolute compromise. And yet now he's working on federal government data. Like that's a bit concerning. And so I don't think we should ignore those concerns. So this is what I meant before, Mary, about when the left says something, because they're so completely discredited, we just go, come on, but it's like, well, no, hang on, there is actually a point here. How can Republicans get involved without sort of looking at the hyperventilation from the left and taking that on board? But how can we get involved more critically, or apply our critical thinking that we've learned over the past 4 years, Republicans, conservatives, right wing, whatever you want to call them, to actually just make sure that everything is above board? That's where I'm at.
And I totally agree and support that. That's absolutely got to happen, or we're just creating yet another problem.
Right. Right. Then you know better than the Democrats who said Joe Biden can do no wrong, right? That's not who we are.
Wow. So getting back to what data Republican release, do you feel like DOGE will be able to uncover and dismantle this government within the government?
Yes, I do. I think that, so in terms of the vast network of money that was being stolen from the American taxpayer to create a form of governance worldwide that no one really knows about or understands. Like when you think of this virus that's spreading everywhere, this woke virus, now you know where it came from. So can that be dismantled? Yes, it absolutely can. I think that the tools that DOGE has will ensure that at least it's exposed. What happened is exposed. I'd like to see more of, like I said, for example, who was involved, at what point, who authorized it, who wrote the check. And I think the DOGE has that information, or should be able to get that information. But I think they'll definitely be able to do that. The question is what will go next? Because this is a system that's been in place for many, many years. So what will the government look like moving forward? We need to slash the number of federal employees that we have. That's absolutely the case. There's just far too many federal employees. And Musk showed when he went in and acquired Twitter, for example, that you didn't need all these employees who were sitting around doing nothing really other than policing speech and, social justice causes. Like Twitter or X was able to function with a lot fewer employees. I think the federal government is the same case. And so if you have fewer employees, more checks and balances, when it comes to sort of AI government, I'm not against AI monitoring government employees, actually, because, all of the monitoring and surveillance tools should be on the people that we are paying with our wages to work for us, right? Not the surveillance tools being weaponized against the public. It should be reversed. And so, is DOGE able to then reduce the number of federal employees and make sure that everything that they're doing is above board? Yes, I think it is. And when you have fewer employees and you have fewer of all of these spidey legs, organizations branching off them where you're just funneling all this money, you are absolutely able to ensure that that doesn't happen again. The key here, however, moving forward, is complete transparency for the public. And I don't think we have that completely yet with DOGE, but we need to keep sort of working on this together and stay involved in this process, which is what I keep saying. If people understand, okay, it's great that we have all this, but how did we get to it? Who was involved? Like, these are the things that the public should know, right? So this is where I think we have to stay involved to shape the future of government.
One of the things that I see with the federal government, and I don't care which branch that you pick, the employees are focused on the process, not the outcome. And as a former small business owner, I was focused purely on outcome. The process was just a kind of a byproduct, if you will. But if you're a small business owner, you are worried about and focused on the outcome, and how you get there is just not that major of a focus. You've got to get there, but it's the outcome. And that's the whole thing, that if you as a business owner are talking to someone who has spent 40 years working for the government, there is going to be a huge conflict, because that government person, all they think about is the process, the rules, the rigid rule following. And that has got to stop, because I realize that the government is not a business, but there are some absolutely 100% truths within how you run a business that have got to be applied to the government, period.
Yes, I agree. The way that the government has been run, I would argue, is kind of like a business, a very corrupt business, one that just basically launders all this money and then goes, oh, sorry, we're bankrupt. That's how they've been operating. So almost like a mafia, really, like a very like organized crime, right? That's a business.
It is. I mean, it is organized crime.
Yes.
And just one aspect, and you alluded to it earlier, is, the insider trading. You look at people that make around $200,000 a year, and then they come out of politics with a net worth of 12 million or 80 million or whatever it is. It's like, that math doesn't work.
Yep. And I'm glad to see that Musk and President Trump spoke about this recently about, what is with these employees. You're on a pretty median sized public servant salary. How do you walk out a millionaire? And I think that is really you can see that money has been the main driver of, like I said, all these lobbyists that pay these politicians millions of dollars to achieve what they want. What's the price tag? Well, the price tag depends on how much are they going to achieve for them. How much are people within the military industrial complex paying for these people to argue for forever wars? How much is big tech funding some of these politicians at the moment? Another very, very key consideration. I mean, all of these things need to be inspected and, on full view for the public to see. If we want to actually talk about a future transparent government, we need to see all of this stuff. And basically, for me, the kind of candidate that should be working in government, Mary, and I think this is kind of what Trump is someone who doesn't really want to be in government, but does it because they know that this is what's needed for their nation. That's your perfect candidate, right? Yes. These are the types of people that we need, not these career politicians, Nancy Pelosi, sitting there for decades, like turning into a shriveled raisin on her seat, how long she's been there, or your Mitch McConnell's. Like, this is just, there needs to be, I'm actually for term limits. And there needs to be a clear inspection of what their interests are, who's donating to them. I think the lobbying system needs a complete reform as well. There should be that we need to look at these things, because ultimately lobbyists are controlling a lot of this as well. Like, you think, okay, well, USAID uncovered all of these millions of dollars or trillions of dollars or billions of dollars, whatever the case may be, to promote all these causes to make this shadow government operate. Well, lobbyists are part of that too. Sure. Look at farmer lobbyists when RFK Jr. called out Bernie Sanders. And he said, well, how much did you accept from Big Pharma? That's a big problem. And so I think that has to be addressed as well. I don't know if I answered your question or if I went on a tangent there, but.
No, you did. You did. And the tangent was great because it was full of great information. So, yeah. And I had replied to actually a post that Bernie Sanders made a while back. And I did a copy paste from his website. And I said, what about this?
Yes.
Didn't get a reply. Did the same thing to, let me think, what's her name? I know her nickname. I don't want to use it. I think it's a little bit condescending. Elizabeth Warren, copy pasted some information from her website. And I said, hey, Elizabeth, what about this? It's from your website. And the content of it was about how, there should not be interaction between politicians and big money, that kind of thing. Really?
Yes.
How do you explain your worth?
Well, here's the thing. So we've seen what power Doge has now. And if Elon is serious about looking into these employees, which I think he is, obviously he's following Trump's directive on that. But what I think would be very, very helpful to see is, complete transparency around some of these organizations that they're, farmer lobbyists or foreign country lobbyists or whatever the case may be, and how they vote. Like, we need a register of how they vote and how it aligns with the lobbying money that they've been given and perhaps the will of the people at that time. Just to give you an example, last year in Australia, they passed the digital ID bill and they said, it's going to be voluntary, don't worry. And now already it's been, a year and they're already talking about, you're going to need a digital ID to access your health data and all of this. So it always starts off as a voluntary thing and then eventually it becomes mandatory, right? And so during that entire debate, of digital ID in the country, there was one particular senator, Senator Katie Gallagher, and she posted, there was one particular post, and I promise you, hundreds, if not over 1,000 comments opposing digital ID. But that will of the people was ignored. And so I would really like to see a system, and I'm not saying monitor people. I'm saying a system where if people want to voluntarily, like say you have a senator that's voted in a certain way, or there's an upcoming bill or whatever, you can see all of their interests and who's donated to them. And then if people want to submit their record of their sentiment, they can do that in a public forum. And then it will be decided based on the people's sentiment, not that senator, right? Like not just their decisions based on who's funding them. This current system of quote unquote democracy that they keep selling us, or America isn't, it's a constitutional republic, but this current system has just been a constant flow of these elected representatives not representing the people. That has to change. It has to change.
Exactly. And one of the things that I can't remember if I posted it, but I think I did. I would love to have a forensic CPA do an audit of someone and I'm just going to take as an example, Senator Lindsey Graham. We all know what a warmonger he has been for years. I want to know how much stock does he own in companies that are part of the military industrial complex, because he benefits financially or he wouldn't be pushing this.
Absolutely.
I'm convinced to the core of my being that that's a fact. So what you're saying is exactly in line with that, because okay, if you want to push this bill through, let's look at what you've got coming to you on the other side of it if it passes.
Absolutely.
That's what you're saying.
And then, okay, so say the person says, yeah, but that's justified because it's going to be beneficial for humanity. Okay, present your case and we'll decide. And the people will ultimately decide. And that is what's been missing from politics. And I think it's still missing. I'll be honest with you, Mary. I mean, where is because here's the problem, right? There have been some people very loud voices that have been very concerned about some of the lack of transparency of Doge. Dr. Naomi Wolf is an example. Great warrior in the freedom movement, hundreds of thousands of followers. She's, I don't agree with absolutely everything she says. I don't agree with absolutely everything anyone says, right? But I think she's great. I think she does great work. And she's been voicing her concerns about some of the things surrounding Doge. Well, she's getting shadow banned. And she can't see, she's getting shadow banned on X, and she can't actually see others who are voicing some of their concerns. I've voiced some of my concerns, which, by the way, if this was a completely fair and transparent system, there wouldn't be shadow banning or suppression of it happening. But I think there is. And so I think that is, if we're talking about complete transparency, complete involvement of the people in every single process, then we need to hear all voices and not be shadow banning anyone who's slightly critical. That's where my sort of, guard gets up, Mary, because I know that shadow banning usually precedes something that's coming that's not going to be good for people.
Right.
Which is, it makes me dig further, right? So I just think there needs to be absolute transparency where the people are actually involved. There needs to be a system where it's clear, you can see the people's sentiment if they choose to display it. And the senators have to be held accountable for all of their actions. This is the senators, congressmen, it has to be this way.
Right. I could not agree with you more. So what are some realistic steps that just the average American can take that would push us in the direction you're talking about? What can the average American do to help make this happen?
Well, there is a committee that is overseeing Doge. I know Marjorie Taylor Greene is involved in that. If people go to invisibleINQ.com, this is where that researcher that I told you about, Andrew Arnold, has actually posted the people that are involved with Doge and those overseeing it. And you can go in, he's got like an interactive map. You can actually go in, you can click, you can see who's involved, who's doing what in there. And encourage those people to be involved in that process and involved with those representatives and sort of start thinking outside of what, the conservative media is the main talking points, right? So I'm like you, Mary, I'm celebrating. I think everything's great, but I'm not hearing a lot of some of the points that I've raised with you today being discussed en masse in conservative media. And I think that's problematic. And I think that we need to, remain very, very involved in everything that's going on if we want to shape the future of better government, better America, or better world, right? So, um, so get back involved, start seeking out some of the voices that are talking about, okay, what could be improved? Like, for example, Dr. Naomi Wolf or Catherine Austin Fitz, I recently interviewed. She's got some harsh words to say, right? So we want to hear these people, consider it and say, okay, well, how can I actually be involved in making this better? So go invisibleiNQ.com. That's, again, Andrew Arnold's site. Have a look at who's involved with Doge and see what you can be involved in and dig up. Don't allow ourselves, we can't allow ourselves to become lazy just because we think we can put implicit trust in the current administration. I'm a person who doesn't put implicit trust in any government. I don't care how much I like them. It's just my nature, and it's my nature to dig. And even if this current administration had perfect intentions, some of the things that they're implementing could be used against us in 4 years' time if the tide shifts, right? So we have to remain politically involved. The reason we got into the mess that we did during COVID was because over years, people stopped being politically involved. So I think that that's important, Mary. I really do.
Right. Well, and then after what you personally have been through, I can certainly see why you feel that way, and you're very justified in that. And your thinking is spot on. I do not disagree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, coming out of Australia, which is, it's dangerous. It's dangerous for people right now. They've just passed laws where if you say anything quote unquote reckless online, it's an automatic 7-year prison sentence. Like it's really gotten really dark and really twisted there. And it happened very quickly, and it happened because Australians are not, or were not, very politically involved, much less than Americans. I can assure you of that. I talk to Americans here who say, oh, Americans, I wish they'd be more on the ball. I'm like, you have no idea how much better it is than Australia. I'm not telling Americans to back off. Don't take your foot off the pedal. But compared to a country like Australia, where people are just blind to a lot of this, because life's generally good, so they don't worry about this stuff. America's a lot better, I can tell you that much. So, but don't take your foot off the pedal, stay involved. Don't allow yourselves to become complacent, even with an administration that you like, because things could happen that, again, this administration may be perfect with perfect intentions, but there could be some things, if we're short-sighted, that we don't see that could later be used against us by a rogue administration, or even some of the people, not everyone within the administration right now is perfect. To think that people don't have flaws or can't be blackmailed or bought or whatever the case it may be, it's naive to think that, Mary, that everyone's perfect, right? So I think we have to stay diligent.
I agree with that, but I also feel like we've sort of uncapped the bottle and let the genie out. And I'm not sure we're going to get that cap back on or the genie back in the bottle after what we saw play out in 2024. What do you think about that?
You're right. Think it's going to change. The world, America's going to change. The world is going to change. A lot is going to be exposed about the crimes that have occurred over the past few years, especially. I think still, we need we need accountability for the 2020 election. That was a stolen election. We need accountability for that. We need to ensure that never happens again. Now, that may not be a day one priority. We've got time for election integrity. There's more pressing issues like getting rid of violent murderers that need to be deported, right? I understand. But, there's things that have to be fixed that will absolutely change the way that America is forever. And that is a good thing. But again, I hope that people don't go back to the position of just sitting and watching, and they stay involved. That's all I'm trying to say.
Well, and I agree with you. At this moment in time, I don't see that happening. I could be wrong. We could be lulled to sleep again, but I really don't see that happening, because this has been such a huge wake-up call for the entire country.
Yes.
I saw a couple of people that had posted things online, and one of them, I reposted it, and I said, this guy is speaking truth. Now, were there a few 4-letter words in what he said? Yes, there were. But my point is, put that aside. Just, take your offensive attitude, put it on hold for a minute. Listen to what the man is saying, because he's right. And then there's another one that it was kind of the same thing, but he had been, I think, maybe a top, he had some kind of a radio show somewhere up in the north, and I reposted what he had to say, and I'm like, the man's right. And apparently about 80 million other people felt that, they felt that same thing, and the video went viral, and within a couple of days, Alex Jones had him on his show. And I have a lot of respect for the gentleman who was the guest because he said, Alex, I owe you an apology because I said some unkind and untrue things about you in the past because I didn't really know who you were or what you were about. And it was a great interview between the two of them. And you saw them sort of mending the fences and coming together. And they had been like 180 degrees apart at one point in the past. So when you see that kind of thing happening, that dialogue, that conversation, I'm encouraged that that won't happen again. The two ingredients to me that are absolutely key to that are number one, respect and unity. You
Yeah.
cannot have, our country has got to be unified, but you cannot achieve it without respect.
And I think that that's, when we were talking at the start about what's immediately shifted, that unity has immediately shifted. You look at how, for example, the Trump administration responded to Hakeem Jeffries, who was essentially calling for violence, right? And the
Mhm.
Trump administration immediately said, the White House said, Hakeem Jeffries needs to respond. We don't want to apologize rather. We don't want to continue with the behavior that we've seen over the past few years. They didn't respond by locking him up. They didn't respond with, a war against him. They said, please do better. This isn't the way that America is going to be moving forward. And I think that that level of maturity, that level of morality that we're seeing right from the top that we just haven't seen from the Biden admin, who is just committed to division, committed to destroying morale, Karine Jean-Pierre and all of these people who just Rachel Levine. I mean, these people do not instill confidence in the people of America. And now we see this total shift of morality, of common sense, of people that respect one another, even if they're on the other side of the aisle. That is working. That is mending the country in ways that I don't think are conceivable yet, but they will be. They will be. It is undoing the disease that has plagued the nation.
Right. Well, and the disease has been it's been invading us for so long. It didn't happen overnight, and it's not going to be cured overnight. But we are on the way to a cure.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And again, I was very impressed with the leadership from the White House when Hakeem Jeffries made those statements and their response. You look at how the Biden admin would have reacted to something like that. They would have, screamed insurrection, locked people up, God knows what else. Whereas the Trump admin just says, please do better and apologize and let's move forward. I think that that is the way that that America will be healed, and it's already happening. I'm already seeing better relationships with people, and it's going to be contagious because good is always more. It always prevails over evil, Mary, and it's as contagious as the evil was. The good will be more contagious. And as I said to you, this is already, I know Americans are very insulated. They're America first, many America only. And by the way, I encourage you to be that way because your country matters more than anyone else, right? You should be nationalists. But often that means that Americans don't understand how much of an impact it's having around the world. I can tell you already, Australia's forming political parties surrounding Trump's policies. You have the AfD in Germany that, while I don't agree with absolutely everything that they do and say, I think that what they were standing for was much better than the other parties. And while they didn't actually win, they achieved second place with some really strong spots, So it's like it is affecting America, is positively impacting the rest of the world. So please keep it up and please be involved in shaping the future of a positive country because it's going to actually impact all of humanity. And for that, I'm sure other people are grateful, Mary.
Without doubt, because I think that we empowered and encouraged some of these countries in Europe to actually take action. It's
Yes.
like they are way farther down the path of destruction than America is. Our lesson from that is we can't let that happen here. Their lesson is it can be turned around. You just have to work for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, you're right. And that's the hope that people had post-election. And that's why you see this swell right now in all countries, including Western countries. People are far more politically involved. They're scrutinizing their politicians a lot more. They're demanding transparency. They're demanding answers to their questions. They want things that they have seen that have been positive in the US in their countries because they see it is possible. It is possible that we can protect women from men beating them in sports. And I mean physically beating them. Like in Australia, there was a former YouTuber who decided like this guy decided he wanted to be a footballer. I don't think he's actually got experience in football, was led into a women's league, a professional league, beat two women physically, with his strength. One of them ended up in hospital. The person who broke the story ended up with an apprehended violence order, saying that she can't talk about it because she dared to expose the fact that a man had brutally assaulted a woman because of his brute strength, and she ended up in hospital. That people aren't having this anymore, Mary, and seeing that it can be done in the US means it can be done anywhere. Common sense can prevail, morality can prevail, and humanity has turned a corner. It's just where is it going now? Do we have control over it? Well, that depends on us, and it depends on our involvement in the processes moving forward.
Right. Totally agree. Well, I applaud all of these women athletes who have stood up and said no more. I especially applaud Riley Gaines. What she has accomplished for women worldwide is nothing short of a miracle. And
Yes.
I applaud her for her hard stance. She didn't back down, and look what happened.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the point, right? You don't back down.
Yeah.
You don't back down. You think of how hard these people have had to fight, and the smears and the attacks that so many of all of us have gone through, right? I've met people that had their homes raided because they happened to be at the Capitol on J6, not even inside the building, just at there, and they've had their homes raided. We're talking about mature age people. And I just think this is insane. What people have endured over the past few years is insane. We can't ever forget that. And it's not to say we need to live perpetually, re-traumatizing ourselves. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying don't ever forget that, and don't ever loosen the responsibility that you feel towards shaping your country and taking back control of your country. Don't ever loosen the reins on that. We can't allow that. We have achieved so much because we've been active. And mind you, that's active against a machine that sought to destroy and kill us all, right?
Exactly.
So imagine how much more we can achieve being active in a machine that actually works with us.
Right. That wants us to prosper and prevail as opposed to shutting us down.
That's right. So that I definitely see a more positive future, Mary. I think that there is a world of opportunity for people right now. It's and again, while it's very important to celebrate the wins, I just urge people to remain critically thinking. It's going to be very important moving forward. And don't be afraid of voicing those critical thoughts. Some people sometimes get upset with me because I think that I'm attacking, Musk or whatever. No, I'm just trying to be as balanced as possible, because it's important to view everything under a microscope, just as we have been over the past few years. I haven't stopped that approach because I care more about humanity than I do about anything else, right? I mean, apart from God. It's like we have to achieve the best outcomes possible. And to do that, we have to inspect everything and say, is this really what's best for us? After we inspect it and we say, okay, yes, you know what? I've looked at this. I've been critical about this. But in the end, I can see this is the best thing. Okay, check that off my list and move on to the next thing. I want to see more of that approach right now with conservatives is all I'm saying.
Right. Well, another thing that's required is to use common sense. I mean, common sense you have to let common sense guide your thoughts and your actions.
Yes. I mean, isn't that something that really guided us over the past few years? It's regardless of the propaganda, regardless of how much of a hold the media had over our minds, we were able to think critically apart from that. And I hope that we maintain that. And regardless of whether it's coming from, mainstream media or even independent media, I hope we stay critically thinking.
Yes, exactly. Wow, this has been very enlightening. What additional information do you have to give to our listeners today as we come toward the end of our time together?
Well, nothing other than so much. I can't say nothing. But in regards to these particular topics, I think we've delved into things that are being exposed. We've talked about this web. We've spoken about the UN, which, by the way, Trump looks like he may be angling to leave. We have more representatives joining that effort now to disengage entirely from the United Nations, which is fantastic.
It needs to.
It needs to go. It needs to be dead and buried forever. President Trump withdrew from the WHO, or at least wrote about his intentions to do so. There is a new appointee that's keen on joining the WHO again. So we have to be wary of that. I'll give you that person's name right now, actually. Just give me a moment, because I think it's important for people to know this. This is why I'm saying, Mary, stuff like that is stuff that I have to dig to find, because there's so much cheerleading going on right now, right? So it's like, well, we have to make sure that everything is on point. Give me a second.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, because I want to be sure and highlight that and make people aware of it, because disengaging from the UN is very important to America.
Yes.
And I'm not interested in someone who feels other than that trying to dissuade the current administration from withdrawing.
Correct.
What absolutely needs to happen.
Correct. So here it is. Trump's new pick for pandemic response, Gerald Parker, is a fan of injections, promoter of the WHO's One Health, and he appears to want to rejoin the WHO despite Trump's intent to withdraw. So it's important that we know that someone like this has been picked as head of pandemic response, someone who favors injections that have been shown to harm millions of people around the world. Someone who favors One Health, which is, if you understand what One Health is, it's basically saying every single human being is subjected to the same medical treatment. You're all the same. We ignore all the nuances within your own bodies. And, this is how we ended up with COVID mandates, right? So that not only is One Health about that, but it's about humanity's relationship to the planet, how this causes climate change, how humans going into nature is causing climate change. So therefore we need to preemptively inject everyone. This was actually a report that was submitted to the White House last year. I spoke about it in the biodefense. I don't have the exact name of the report right now, but it was sponsored by the creators of the monkeypox injection, right? So these guys went in and said, okay, we need to, because of climate change, we've got to basically preemptively inject Americans forever. That's One Health. And this guy's supportive of One Health. So we need to be careful of this.
How did he get picked? I mean,
Trump picked him.
Did someone miss that?
Trump picked him. His name is Gerald Parker. So I encourage everyone to look into that. So this is what I'm saying, Mary. We have to be diligent.
That's why we need you, helping guide.
Of course. And I will continue to do that. I will continue to do that and continue to voice things that I think aren't in line with what the American people have been promised, because it will benefit Americans and it will benefit the whole world as long as we keep our finger on the pulse.
Exactly. And that's what you and I both want to do.
Appreciate you. I'll just quickly shout out to everyone. If you want to follow me, you can follow at ZEEE_media on X, and also our Rumble channel, ZEEE Media, all one word. And you'll get notified every time we go live if you follow that channel. And our website, zeemedia.com, is where you can find all of our work, including where we contribute to other platforms and networks.
Yes, thank you. I was going to get to that, but you took quicker
Preempted.
So thank you for that. All right.
Appreciate you so much, Mary. Thank you. And thank you to your viewers as well.
I appreciate you too. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the Awake to Truth podcast. Visit our website at awaketotruth.org and connect with Mary Starr on X, @awaketotruth_, and on Rumble at Awake to Truth Ministries. The Awake to Truth podcast, a beacon of hope in a world shrouded by shadows.